Welcome to Imperfect Company. I'm Leigh Jasper, and welcome to Sam.
Thanks. I'm Sam Kroonenburg, and no guest today, just the two of us. Two imperfect people talking about their imperfect companies.
And we're going to talk about everything we did and what we learned and the mistakes we made scaling companies into the US.
Yeah.
One each previously, and now we're doing it again with Firmable and with Cuttable.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about some of the things we've learned.
Yeah, we've both built global businesses and each done it a couple of times now. So lots to talk about.
Lots we got wrong and lots of lessons learned that we'll explore today.
That's right. Let's do it. You just got back from San Francisco.
Yep, over in San Francisco.
How did you
launching
find
the team
it?
over
What's
there.
going on over there?
Well, it's back to kind of boom times. And I lived in the Bay Area about 10 years ago. I had 4 or 5 years over there, and it goes through its booms and its busts, but it's very much boom time, AI boom time.
I feel like San Francisco's busts are maybe not as bad as everywhere else busts. It's just...
It wasn't great after COVID, but...
okay, fair
enough. Everybody moved out. I think everybody's well and truly moved back. So
yeah, okay. And so what were you seeing over there in AI businesses? Were you meeting with established founders or early stage, seed stage, or were you mostly just focused on Firmable's entry?
Bit of all the above. So we have moved across our head of sales from Australia. So one of the things we did this with when we launched Aconex into various countries as well. We'd always take somebody who was experienced within the team and get them to launch into a new market. So Chester, who runs sales here in Australia, he's moving across. So we're getting him all set up. Starting to hire as well. So getting our first SDRs and AEs into the sales team. So a lot of hiring, and then meeting with Aussie founders. And I won't get into tax today. It's not the time for tax, but very frustrating to see what's happening with so many founders now staying over and basically not coming back to Australia. So it's, but some great founders. And I think perhaps the thing that makes it such a boom at the moment is people looking at how they use AI to fundamentally retool and develop companies so much faster than I think. Well, certainly what I saw with Aconex, and applying a lot of that with Firmable. But just the speed at which people are building companies today is, I haven't seen anything like it. It's 10x what the .com boom was.
And there's so many companies too, right?
Yeah, loads of companies.
And so how important do you think it is when launching into the US that you bring folks from the Australian team? Like, why do you do that, and how important do you think that is?
So we do it for a few reasons. I think we learned, again, on the Aconex journey, and wasn't just into the US, into every market we went into, that having somebody that takes your culture and so culture is one thing, and then all the learnings about how you build a business, how you go to market. It's much easier to transplant somebody or maybe a few people from the core company and to take them into the market to take the culture, but then also to bring all of the learnings, all the knowledge, all go to market. Even just something as simple as knowing what the sales points are. You don't have to teach that into somebody new. And then, of course, we're hiring locally. So we've done this both in the US, and we've also launched into Southeast Asia in the last few months. Again, hiring locally and building the team as much as we can with local salespeople. And the great thing about San Francisco is there's an energy that not just in pure tech, but people move there for tech opportunities. So of the SDRs and AEs I was speaking to, they've all moved to San Francisco for a tech opportunity. And interestingly, they're also very happy, at least the ones I was speaking to join a smaller company that doesn't have 100 SDRs yet to be effectively a founding member of the sales team.
Interesting. Yeah. So did you find, so we recently moved Cuttable into New York as well. And I think one of the things we found with our first, let's say 3 hires there was just having any kind of knowledge of who we are, right? Like we have press here and people know who we are, but in the US and New York, they have no idea who Cuttable is. Did you find that barrier of why would I join this when I could join this cool, glossy San Francisco startup that everyone's talking about?
I think we've been, I guess, somewhat fortunate that we had, certainly the candidates and our HR team's done a good job of just leaning into the fact that we are brand new. And I think taking the roles or presenting the roles as founding SDR roles and founding AE roles, so that the people that have applied understand they're joining at the ground floor, and we've sort of lent into that. But it is hard. I mean, the reality is we don't have a brand over there yet, so it's rather than worrying about that, kind of taking the newness and the fact that we're building from the ground floor in that market as a great thing.
And you can kind of go like, hey, you get an opportunity to join something kind of before anyone knows about it here yet, but it's got a proven track record in another country, right? So it's not any other US company, they'd have to be taking a bet on something that's not proven.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And the other thing is being able to even talk to, I'm sure Chester wouldn't mind me saying this, but to lean into his story, he joined as our first salesperson.
Yeah.
And he built a team to 30, 40 people here in Australia. And now he's leading our efforts into the US. So you sort of show what happens when somebody joins early in a company and they join when you're building a team. So that's been good.
So I actually found this with our head of sales. He moved to New York. And I think really it was more him that was inspiring people to join more than myself and the vision, because it was more about, hey, I get to work with this like driven person who's moved to the other side of the world, who stood this up in Australia, then moved to the other side of the world. So I found that a more effective way of recruiting.
Yeah. So if we wind back before, obviously Cuttable now, Cloud Guru in the past, what's different about building into the US for you guys now? Are you following a similar template, or was it different first time round?
I think maybe I'd say it's somewhat similar. We're trying to go global early, but we're not. Cloud Guru was different because we were a B2C company first. So we were selling entirely online from day one. So I think from day one, maybe 50% of our revenue was into the US. So what that meant is the first couple of years of the business, we built it from here. But then when we opened in the US, it was really just to establish more boots on the ground, build a B2B presence. Whereas with Cuttable, we did the first year here, and about 70% of our revenue at this point is Australia based, 30% US based, and so we're still going early, but we incubated a little bit more here, selling to the local Aussie market first, and that's just because of the nature of what we sell. We're selling to marketing teams. We were B2B from day one, so we needed that just quick interface. Locally with customers, we could just sit down with them and show them the product and all of that. But in terms of what's different, I think, we've chosen a different city. We've opened in New York. So
and that's primarily to serve your customer base.
Our customer base is e-commerce companies and advertising agencies, and New York is a big base for that. In Cloud Guru, we opened in Austin, Texas, because we wanted time zone centrality to serve both coasts, which worked really well. Whereas with Cuttable, we actually serve the West Coast from Australia already with our sales teams. There's a decent enough overlap, whereas the whole East Coast is dark to us. We just literally can't serve it from here because there's not a single hour of business hour overlap. So New York was kind of no-brainer center for our customers and outside of our reach time zone wise in Australia. But the flip side is it's a lot
super
more painful.
expensive.
It's really expensive and very painful to run a company across those two time zones for the same reason. There's not a single hour of business hour overlap. So we're definitely feeling that pain right now, but it'll be worth it. And there are ways in which you can build the company to kind of navigate that, I think. Yeah. And so how much? So San Francisco. So how are you dealing with the time zone issues?
Well, I guess the reason for us for San Francisco. So firstly, a bit of overlap in time zone, and we'll likely have a second office. So San Francisco, like with Aconex, we wanted to have a core operation, in the Bay Area. I think being able to lean into tech for us, and 25% of our customer base is tech already, so it makes some sense to be there. It's expensive though, so we'll likely build a second location. Salt Lake City, Austin, maybe, although Austin's a bit more expensive these days. Perhaps Nashville, something like that.
Did you worry about, because honestly, my reaction to San Francisco was like, I don't want to the salaries and the competing for talent must be really difficult.
Yeah, I think for us, it was also just to have exposure to the latest, particularly in sales. So because we're selling in, we're selling broadly across sales teams with Firmable. So from very experienced, sophisticated sales teams, but all the way down. But it's quite important to know what's happening in go-to-market tech. And so being there for that reason, I think is quite important. And speaking to sales leaders, so a lot of sales teams, while they're not as sophisticated as tech companies, they often look to tech companies for how to build their sales teams over time. So we felt that was important. Also happen to live there, so that's the other added benefit. I know a lot of people there, so it's having been in the Bay. Even last week we were able to have meetings with dozens of people that I know, and just to connect into the network. So it's much easier when you've got an established network that you can leverage and connect into. Of course, when we first went over with Aconex, we couldn't do that. But the other thing with Aconex, we made a lot of mistakes going into the US. So we're trying to do it a bit differently this time. And I think if we step back even before putting people in.
Yeah.
What we want to do is get our strategy right for the US. Back at Aconex, we served every type of construction project, and the US was actually quite late in our journey. We'd already opened multiple other locations.
So what year was that?
It would have been 2010 or thereabouts, 2009,
so
2010.
you're probably, what, 8 years in?
Yeah, so 8, 9 years in. We'd already had, let me get my years right, it might be the year of 2009, I think we launched into the US. So we already we launched our product 2001, had a number of years building in other locations, and that'd been really good for us going into places like Dubai. Hong Kong was a great market for us. So we had several dozen, maybe even 30, 40 cities that we'd already started to serve and had a location in before we went to the US. Partly we benefited from the downturn in the Middle East. I mean, a lot of American project directors who'd been in Dubai and Abu Dhabi essentially with the GFC, they all moved back to the US. So we're able to follow some of our customers back into the US, or some of our users, not so much the same companies, but individuals that use Aconex.
Did you have to change the product much for the US? Or?
Didn't really have to change it, but we learned, well, probably too slowly. We tried to do every type of project to start with. So we were doing, Australia, we did everything from high-res residential, commercial, to infrastructure, mining, oil and gas. In the US, we just thought, we'll do the same.
Right.
And didn't realise just how big the market was. And actually, we sort of, to be honest, didn't generate a lot of early growth until we said, let's focus in on one vertical or a couple of verticals. So we ended up doing very much heavy infrastructure, like big infrastructure, and then heavy engineering, so mining, oil and gas. And we lent into those markets and really didn't do a lot in commercial or residential. But being able to focus the team and really focusing in around Texas particularly. So we did a lot of work out of Houston and then out of Denver with mining, and then big infrastructure, which was more broadly spread.
I just think it's such a critical lesson for startups. Focus early is so important, even if it's early in a new market, not early in the business, but just creating a wedge and then doing that one thing really well.
And we forget from Australia. Australia's tiny relative to the US. So one big vertical in the US is bigger than Australia. So that's a good point. And with Firmable, we're trying to do is apply a little bit of that learning. I've seen this with other companies as well. If you don't focus, you end up spreading yourselves too thin. So we've really tried to focus in on a couple of verticals that we think we'll be able to sell well into. So building data sets around, particularly IT services, cybersecurity. We're also looking at construction, healthcare, where we'll go into those verticals and build data sets around those.
Okay. So for Cloud Guru, when we moved into the US, I guess you could argue we were doing
kind of there already, right?
We were doing fine outside the US. We were selling into it. So do you need a physical presence? And I think for us, it came down to, you've actually, ultimately we looked at it and said, well, this company, future investment's going to come from the US because most of our customers are there, 50, 60% of our customers. And ultimately, it's probably going to be acquired by a US company. So we want to make this as simple as possible to raise money in the US, get acquired in the US. And so having the presence there makes US people more comfortable. But then having the actual finance, running to US calendar years, US accounting, US
Did
dollars.
you re-domicile the company?
Yeah, we flipped the TopCo
in
the end from, we were originally UK because me and my brother were based in London and Australia. We flipped it from the UK to the US with our Series B, I think.
Right.
And so, I think a lot of founders could look and go, well, do I actually even need to be there? I can just sell online. And I think, I'm interested in how that went for you. Did you do that? You didn't flip with Aconex,
No, we didn't flip with Aconex, although we had a US investor. So we effectively treated the market. Well, we became American in the sense that we tried to position ourselves and present ourselves to American customers as 100% in country. I mean, I think you got to remember we thought about this, that American customers, at least in construction, had probably never bought software from anybody other than a US vendor. So while they might be intrigued that an Australian company is selling this construction software, they really weren't going to commit to that. So we, for all intents and purposes,
it's a whole extra hurdle with procurement, right?
Just made ourselves look American. We of course had some of the team there and then hired locally, so had largely American sales team. But if you looked at the product, if you looked at all of our marketing, you would think we're an American company. And so we just really lent into that. I would say that one of the big things for us, and I've written about this in the past, but we had to get used to the fact that Americans aren't Australians and kind of assume that we're always the same and that we speak basically the same language.
Just S's instead of Z's.
S's instead of Z's. But even just how we thought about positioning the product, we had to really try and understand how Americans bought, and there was some differences there, maybe subtle differences, but it was enough to, if you didn't get it right, it made it really hard to sell.
So I'm interested in that. I recently was chatting to a founder who moved into the US but had taken the whole team in the US was from Australia and was having this issue around, hey, well, actually, like, we actually don't know how to sell to Americans, you know, like, and so I think the mix, like doing what you've done, we've done the same at Cuttable, where you bring one or two people over to
key talent, and then
the product, the culture, the company culture, but then Americans know how to sell to Americans. It kind of makes sense, because if you bring an American to Australia and say sell to Australians, like, you know, intuitively as an Australian, American's going to sell to you differently than you're used to.
Yeah.
Right? They just operate in a different way.
Yeah.
So is that the reason why you brought one or two over, but not the whole
Yeah, that's
team?
right. And well, I think it's also moving people is expensive as well. The reality is we couldn't move a whole company, or we could, I guess, if we re-domiciled completely, but then that's a whole other question. But in terms of setting up a sales team, we thought getting Chester as a key member of the team, key member of our executive team across there. I'll be spending a lot of time over there, so if we've still got a house over in the Bay Area, we'll reboot that and spend a bit of time over there. So
it's like the Facebook house, but it's the Aconex
yeah,
house.
like well, actually, ironically, it actually does quite look like the Facebook house with the one of those rancher style houses.
Oh, really?
We don't have the zip line in the back into the pool, but otherwise, pretty much like the Facebook house. And so we'll reboot that and use that. But this time round, we'll set the office up in the city. I just think at the moment with AI, it's just probably more in San Francisco than down down the peninsula.
Okay, so downtown, not Palo Alto.
Yeah, downtown. Look, I mean, it's the whole Bay Area, but for us, we just think also hiring younger salespeople is probably a little bit easier in the city. So we'll, but it's whether you're in the city or you're down the peninsula. I mean, it's taking off everywhere.
So what's going on? What's that dynamic? Is that because maybe the last boom scaled a lot out of Palo Alto or those areas, and so that's now the more established companies, and it's
I think it's a bit of that. I think frankly, I think you get a younger demographic in the city, so there's a little bit of that. If people who are, if you've got family and kids, being down in Menlo Park or Palo Alto is great.
It's funny when you go there, you have this vision in your mind of super high tech, but it just feels like you're in the suburbs.
Yeah. And the reality is a lot of Silicon Valley is suburbs, but if you want sort of a little bit more vibrant, the city's certainly that. But you had, of course, Facebook, you've got Apple, you've got Google. I mean, you've got some of the biggest companies in the world down in the valley. But then more recently, the likes of Salesforce and others set up in Twitter, etc., and a lot of the AI companies, so Anthropic and OpenAI, are in the city. So a lot of AI talent seems to be more concentrated in the city. But ultimately, we're going probably in the south of the city. So whether you're in East Bay and you come across on the BART or down on the peninsula, you can get up there pretty easily. So been quite quite thoughtful about where we put the office in terms of the talent we want to attract. But I think the biggest thing is getting the team built locally, and we'll have to learn how to sell too. I mean, I think we are looking at what works here doesn't necessarily work into the US. So we're testing our messaging. I think we'll lean a lot more heavily into our AI native story than we have in Australia, just given the nature of who we'll be selling to in the US. So there's a lot. We'll tweak the story. We'll test what works and see how we go. So Sam, Ed's moved over. So one of your founders has moved over. To the US, and where do you think how does that, I guess, over time, does the gravity of the company sit split between Australia and the US, or how do you think about where it's headed?
Maybe this is controversial opinion, but I don't actually think it matters so much what you call that the company has a headquarters. A lot of people are like, are your headquarters in Melbourne or are they in New York? I think it just matters that you have centers of gravity of different functions. So we have product here, and our product leaders are here, and most of engineering is here, and then we'll have spot engineers in the US to help support, and then vice versa over time we'll have, so our head of sales, Kieran, has moved over to New York. We've now got as many salespeople in New York as we have in Australia, and that will keep growing, and center of gravity of sales will be there. I think I think it's important to have leaders in each place. I think it's very hard as a founder to try to lead in two places. I mean, even if you're on a plane every week,
it's not
you still can't do it because you're not there half the time. So we had my co-founder Ed moved to New York a few months ago and helped establish that team there with our head of sales. We've now, similar to you, have had one of our SDRs move over, one of our customer service folks move over, and we started seeding that team. So built a pod there, and then we're hiring out over there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's so important to have a founder on the ground because there are just, it's like early in a business, there are just so many issues around like logistics. You need someone who can be across horizontally across a lot of things and not just deep in one area. You need someone who's just going to deal with whatever it is, like the water stops working in the office, even just things as trivial as that. Or opening bank accounts, and I think you need someone there. What I did with Cloud Guru was a little bit different. Neither myself or my brother, who was my co-founder, moved to America, but we hired a COO.
Yeah.
And he ran our US presence, and he was kind of like a third co-founder. He was the one that drove the US day to day. He was there every day. I was dealing with all those issues, and I think you need someone. I don't think, you hear some companies do like country manager. You need a country manager, and I don't think you need to hire someone as GM of America. I think you're better to give them a function in the company that they own, and they're kind of quasi GM of America. So that was my COO. He ran all of finance and sales and customer success, and that was what he owned. And he was quasi effectively country manager anyway. But yeah, I know some companies do it differently, and they have someone who's there just to head up the country. Yeah,
with Aconex, I moved over to the US. So as a founder moved over. I think with Firmable, I'll be spending a bit of time backwards and forwards, but likely, at some point, not too far away, maybe over there full time. I think the other thing is having, with Chester, he joined very early. So, he's been there from day one when we started selling. So having somebody that's got that understanding of the business, really important.
Senior leadership, right?
Yeah, it's a senior
someone
leadership.
There's got to be someone in that office people know to go to when there's just something squirrely happens that they don't know who to go to on it. It's just clear it's that person.
Yeah. Right? You think what you said about headquarters, so we didn't have, we were sort of Melbourne, but we were sort of San Francisco at Aconex, and often you say it was somewhere across the Pacific because we'd be backwards and forwards a lot, but we had a bunch of our execs in San Francisco, a bunch in Melbourne, and then one or two others in London and around the place. But the centers of gravity were Melbourne and San Francisco.
And I think you can run an executive team across borders. I did.
Yeah, we did. We just had, we worked fine for us. We had 2 or 3 of our execs. We had myself. Paul came across the COO. Our CFO was in the US. Yeah. We had product. Rob back. It was in Melbourne. Marketing was kind of a bit in between. But sales was led. Well, not out of either San Francisco or Melbourne. It was led out of wherever Andrew Clander was sitting on a plane. So he was out of he's out of Sydney, but then moved back to Europe. But he kept running, and then we had our head of Europe sitting in London. So we worked as a global team. We did that very, very early on.
Do you think they felt like a team?
100%. Yeah. Well, 100%. I think we had to do a lot. This is pre Zoom. We had to. We had video conferencing in all our core offices, and that cost a lot back in the day, but we wanted to.
And it never worked.
And never quite worked, but it was not bad. We got it to the point where we could have our exec meeting once a week or once a fortnight it was, and we would do that all on whatever it was. I can't remember the product even, but it was a lot clunkier than what you do today, but it worked. And so we ran a global team 24/7 almost, in terms of something was happening somewhere in the world all the time.
And I think if you have every team has its own presence and location, engineering here, sales there, that kind of thing, then the weight of time zone distribution becomes more, not totally, but more about ensuring that the executive team feels like a team, because that's the one team that are truly spread, right? And so that's where for me at Cloud Guru, it was like putting in the effort to make sure that the executive team were connecting at the right points every week and throughout the week at the touch points and the time zone overlap.
It's all about Imperfect Company and the mistakes we make. Going to the US, were there some mistakes you made or things you learnt on the journey for Cloud Guru?
I know I had to learn. I remember going into a sales meeting with my head of sales in the States, and jumping on with a customer, and I thought it all went really well, and we came out afterwards, and he said to me, "Sam, it was okay, but you've just got to be more American. Just got to be more." And I'm like, "What do you mean?" And he's like, "Well, this is the best product ever. Like, this is a great product, but you're just kind of like, yeah, look, it's pretty, it's pretty good, but try it out, see what you think. It's like, that's not how you sell to Americans, So I think I had to learn a bit of that, like, bravado and, like, just naturally not bringing that humility that Australians, I don't know if it's it's definitely part of our culture. I don't know if we have it, like, beaten into us, or it's just part of the Australian culture. And
I think we tend to undersell rather than...
Undersell. I heard... an Australian VC living in the States once told me that so what happens is when Americans go in to pitch to American VCs, they overstate their traction. So, imagine they're doing a certain amount of revenue, they might kind of double it in the way they frame it. Oh, by the end of the year, we're going to be doing this much, right? Whereas Australians do the opposite.
Yeah.
Whereas they will understate it because they'll be thinking, oh, but we might lose this, and is that real revenue, and blah, blah, blah. But what happens is the US VCs automatically discount because they're used to being bullshitted.
Oversold in a
So
sense.
then they take, the Australians are discounting it, and then they discount, the VCs discount it again because they think they're being oversold. So a lot of the time, the Aussie companies, the US VCs will assume they're doing maybe 4 or 5 times less revenue than they really are, right? Just from the way they, or even if it's not revenue, but just like maturity of business.
Yeah, when I lived in San Francisco, we'd see Australian companies coming through to pitch, and it was exactly that. They just weren't selling themselves in the same way that Americans did. And the Australian would have 10 people in their company, and they say, oh, well, we're only 10 people, and we're doing this and that, and we're this much revenue. We're figuring it out, and we haven't quite cracked the go-to-market yet. And whereas the American would say, yeah, we're the same size company, but we're the leader in our space. We've got this product that serves a particular need. Nobody else comes close to us on this particular thing that we do. It was just a very different way of positioning something. Australians were almost apologetic rather than just saying, this is what we've done. This is what we're amazing at. We're the best in the world at this. And
what's tricky, though, I think, is once you actually get investment, and I think they really appreciate the honesty. Yeah. Like the US investors, it's something they don't see.
Yeah, we don't want to lose the humility in the company, for example, but it's how we...
How do you get there?
How do you shift it up in the US?
How do you get the investment in the first place? Yeah. I think we have to learn to be more American. Yeah.
I think we had a huge problem with Aconex is just hiring salespeople. Hiring salespeople in America, because they were all great at positioning themselves. And we just took us a little while to work out how to hire the right salespeople. And we had some terrible senior hires as well, where we'd look at somebody that had an amazing resume with... And one person was at a very large tech company, carried an amazingly large quota, like biggest quota I'd ever seen somebody carry, and supposedly been performing really well. But just had never actually run all the nuts and bolts of a smaller company. So they might have been able to hire and run a team, but they'd never worked out how you set up a comp plan or how you build a team, or if you need to build a different part of the go-to-market function, how do you do that? It doesn't just get handed to you by marketing. You've actually got to work with marketing to develop that.
Operating something that's already running and building something.
Very
different skill sets, because one is exploratory. Right? Like it's not. You have to find the thing that works for that business. So it's exploration.
That's partly why with Firmable moving Chester across, like he's entrepreneurial. He helped build our business here, helped work out what resonated with customers. We want that same muscle going to the US. We want somebody who can learn from the market, can build the team, can build the go-to-market, can work out what it is that we can differentiate on. And if you can't do that early on, you're going to struggle to do it down the track. So getting the right person is so critical, I think, in that first wave.
Because it's about learning what the customer wants and then matching the right people in go-to-market that can deliver on that too, right? So it's like the hiring and the selling and delivering. You got to be able to work them together.
The other thing we tried to build was a very much an American sales model, and that's something that we did that with Aconex. I think that's blended straight into what we're doing with Firmable. But we'll try and do that again. But even some simple things like, and we haven't done this yet with Firmable, but we will soon, is put in the President's Club, which is just a big thing for Americans that, when you, whatever the cutoff point is, but if you make quota, you go away to President's Club and you celebrate your best salespeople. And that's something that was probably the best money ever spent at Aconex. We take the best salespeople away for a few days, bring their partners with them. So they're working hard. If they're responding to something on the weekend, their partner still sees the benefit of that by coming away and seeing the company. And it also locks people in. So they get to know everybody else. You get your best people interacting. So we found it was the best money ever. The best dollars we spent on the sales team was building that President's Club.
And so that's not we had a similar experience, but I didn't build the go-to-market here in Australia at Cloud Guru. So that's not a thing here?
No.
presence?
Well, I'm sure it is for American companies, but certainly something that we hadn't seen at Aconex. And no Australian salesperson ever said to us, "Oh, you need to have a President's Club." But once we went to the US, we then built that in, and of course we did it globally, so it wasn't just for the American team. That then became something that was, again, just a huge draw for people. And you'll often see in American resumes or people that work with American companies, they'll have made club. So we tried to build a US sales model. I think, frankly, Americans run that so well, and there's some things that are great to do out of America, like sales, I think, is one, marketing is another one. I think product, actually, I mean, we had a German team and we kept our German product team because they're really good at building products. So sometimes there's certain countries, and it's a bit stereotypical maybe, but you kind of lean into that. And we kept a lot of our product here. We of course had some of our functions here in Australia, but sales and marketing were largely led out of the US.
So you said you struggled with the first sales hires in the US.
We had such a bad strike rate with our first 10 hires. We had one that lasted more than a year or so.
So what did you learn? What, like, for people who are founders who are thinking about going into the States, because I hear this a lot, how do you hire first salesperson there?
It's hard. Look, I'd love it if there was a silver bullet. I've just had interviews with SDRs and AEs in San Francisco, and frankly, they all came across really well.
It's hard.
It's hard to pick.
The Americans come across so
and so we're going back to trying to really understand what their day looks like. So what do you do? Tell us the sales processes you go through. To get them to describe a day in their life. I think that's one thing that I ask, and try and get a real understanding of how they, or do they really understand the sales process? So they're not just going through the motions. And then
do you get them to do, like at Cuttable, we get them to do like we do scenarios.
Do that. I mean, I'm not doing that, but the team's doing that. They're getting, and we'll do a lot with sales. We get them actually to pitch us. So we'll say, here's the scenario, and we want you to sell. And the great thing, because we're selling to salespeople, they should know how to use a product like ours anyway, because they'll have data. They'll have data and signals. Ideally, and if they don't, they should know how that would help them. So we're able to say to them, okay, you kind of know what Firmable does now. Sell it back to us in your context. So if you're in, say they've been selling widgets, okay, well, you're selling to a widget sales team, and why they need Firmable, sell that to us. So that's one thing we always do.
We do the obstinate. We make them do a cold call live with our head of sales.
Yeah, that's great.
And he just plays obstinate. Customer not interested. It's just interesting to see how they react when hit with a brick wall.
Then the other thing, I think one mistake I made was not actually saying no to people. So of those 10 first sales hires, the team had gone through the process of hiring them, and I did a lot, and still do a lot of interviews. And actually, Firmable will have one of the founders pretty much interview everybody that comes in to make sure we're getting the right type of people in.
Great.
I still did that at Aconex, but I probably didn't say no to a few people. It wasn't 100%, but rather than saying, well, sometimes I felt the team had gone through a hiring process, didn't want to ding them at the last hurdle, but I think I should have been a lot stronger and just saying, no, they're not quite right. If I don't feel good about them, go with my gut a bit and just
to be honest, I think nearly every time we've made a bad hire in any of my companies, the instinct, the gut has been there from the interview. Where it's often when you use logic to override your instinct, I think, and you justify, but maybe that's not an issue because of this. And
the other thing we do is hire for redundancy, just like Google does with planning redundancy into its server farms, into its data centers, etc. So we would hire more salespeople than we thought we needed, and accept that we couldn't necessarily always perfectly pick them during a hiring process, but then we do our onboarding, and we would regularly get through the onboarding process. So a week or two in, we'd know people weren't right, and at that point we'd move them on. So we were sort of accepting that we would bring people on and they might not all work. If they did all work, great, we'll run with a few extra people, but invariably there'd be somebody that wasn't quite the right fit, and so we'd move quickly then.
I think that's critical. Also, if you're looking at your revenue plan and you're relying on sales delivering, then you
can't be unders.
No, you can't say, they're all going to work out. That's just not reality. And so your Firmable's getting close to 100 people now. So at what point will you continue that it'll always be a founder on the interview process? At what point do you step back?
There's obviously a point where if you're 50,000 people, you probably can't do it. We're a long way off that, but
there's a few crazy CEOs who do that stuff at many thousands of people. But,
I think I don't know maybe you get to 1,000 or 500. I think with 3 founders, I think we can go do it a bit longer. I think if you're 1 or 2 founders, obviously that gets really hard to do that. You've still got to do other things with your days. So I would tend to even meet people, even if it was as Aconex got bigger, even just a 5-10 minute,
Yep.
you know, and partly that's also the sales process and getting them in. I think when a new starter can connect with one of the founders, I think that's really valuable. So I think we'll be doing it, let's say 200-300 people at least.
Yeah.
I think we'd still be have one of the, Paul, Karthik or myself involved in the hiring.
I think that makes sense because your first 200 or 300 people are very much the DNA of the company. We did something similar, probably 200 or 300 people at Cloud Guru before I stopped being in on everything. Yeah. I remember when I hired my first VP of sales in Austin, I called up. I was so happy. I was like, oh my God, we've finally done it. It took months. And I called up James Cameron at Airtree. I remember saying to him, we've done it. We've got our VP of sales. And the only thing he said to me, or the first thing he said to me was, don't worry, mate. Everybody fucks up their first one. I was like, what? What do you like? I was like so thrown, and I had a laugh. And then 3 months later, we had to let him go. And then our second one was, the guy we kept the whole way through the journey. He was amazing. But he was 100% right. And I think,
it's really hard.
The important thing is having that mindset as a founder that you're just not always going to get it right, and just don't beat yourself up if you are learning a new market. Right? You are learning, and you will mess things up. And even critical hires like that, if you don't get them right, don't stick on it. Like to your point, you got 10 wrong.
Yeah,
right,
well, 9 out of 10, but a lot more than 10 overall. But
the
first
you need
10
to
was
just
literally
accept
9.
that and move on. Right?
Yeah, I mean,
if
you're getting 1 out of 10, clearly something's wrong with the hiring process.
Yes, that's a problem.
So we had to fix that. But then from there on, I reckon we only got to probably, I think the best we got to was 2 out of 3. And which some of us, you might say, well, that's a third of people you're getting wrong. I just think it's hard, and that's the reality. And so we sort of built a system that allowed for the fact that we'd get probably 1 in 3 wrong. And
that's about right. That's about normal. Yeah.
But it's expensive, so that's the other thing.
It is.
You accept you're going to make a mistake on the hiring, but then move fast once they start.
You need to move fast. So you had a good system in place for vetting their first month or two.
And actually doing training was a great thing. So the onboarding, we'd have one of our senior sales managers would do the onboarding. And part of their job would be not just to teach the, whatever number, 10, 20 people that were starting, but to work out if there were people that weren't going to make it. And they were doing kind of role playing and getting used to something. So it's kind of an extended interview in a sense. And it worked well for us. But the other thing is, with sales, it's hard to hire often, but, mostly we look for people who are curious and entrepreneurial, particularly in those early hires. As you get bigger, it can be more people who are more systematic, but early on, just getting people who can think and think their way through a sales process and then bring that back into the team. So we then as a company could learn from those original salespeople.
Yeah. And so how important did you find hiring? Did you hire marketing out of the US as well as you scaled sales, and did you keep them together?
Yeah, we built out marketing. We started some marketing in Melbourne, but the center of gravity shifted towards San Francisco. The reality was we had, I think it's just we were able to find probably stronger marketers out of the Bay Area. And then we also had a team in India.
That's true. There's just
it.
a depth of talent in the US in marketing that there isn't, it's just not as deep.
Yeah, I think it's just not as you say, not as deep in Australia.
There's still good people. There's just not as many of them.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. And I think also with, maybe it's a bit different now, but back then having good SaaS experience, because SaaS marketing is a particular thing, right? It's different than selling shoes or,
Although then we found the problem was everywhere we'd have the Salesforce play. And so we had some marketers that came out of Salesforce and they couldn't think their way through. I mean, some were great, but some weren't so good because they just wanted to apply the cookie cutter kind of, this is what Salesforce does.
Right.
And some of what Salesforce did from a marketing point of view was entirely relevant, but some of it wasn't. We were still, it's a completely different industry, construction, very, very hard to market to kind of demographic, if you like. And so, customer base. So we had to, we wanted marketers who could say, well, this is what we did at Salesforce and this is what worked.
Right.
Or this is what could work, and then iterate and learn from what was going well for us. So, but people who are very much, this is what Salesforce does, it has to be the same.
Yeah.
They didn't work for us.
I just found I find having sales and marketing close together is so important because you need that fast feedback from sales on what's resonating, what are the buyers, what are they really here to buy? Are we addressing the concerns up front of the website? Are we getting the right people in, like that needs a really close, fast loop
Yeah.
between sales and marketing. And if they're in different countries, that's really challenging.
Yeah. And the more you can see is one go-to-market function. So
yes, that's it.
Yeah. And we tried to think whether it's in some parts of that process could be in sales, some could be in marketing, doesn't really matter, but there's one end-to-end process.
Yeah.
And obviously customer success is part of that as well. So
Yeah.
from the minute somebody hears about you, engages with you through the sales process, through to ongoing support, try and make that one engine as much as
sales
possible.
enablement, like Cuttable, our marketing team is still doing the sales collateral for the sales team, right? Because we don't have a separate sales enablement team yet. And, like just having those teams close together is really helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. So Sam, it's been great to talk about how we built companies into the US and what we got wrong and what we learnt, and also what we're doing this time around. So for those of you following, please continue to follow Imperfect Company. Share it with all your founder friends. Share it with anybody, frankly, who might benefit from it.
Anyone who wants to listen to two imperfect people,
you got it with us every time.
Place to go.
And leave us a review, and of course send us questions. So if you've got anything you'd like to ask us, please feel free to do so.
Yeah, awesome.
Great, thanks Sam.
Cheers.
Bye.